Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Actually, it's really my honor to take part in this important summit and also contribute to the coming excellent discussion on this very important topic. So I'm T.K. Chiang from CLP Holdings, and CLP is a electricity provider, in Hong Kong, mainland China, Australia, and India mainly. So according to some information, in 2023, the world experienced its hottest year on record, and many experts are forecasting that we'll see even higher temperatures this year. And actually, it's not just heat waves. Climate change has brought about increasingly frequent and powerful extreme weather events, such as storms and flooding, and these events pose severe threats to the prosperity and well-being of our society. So it's clear that climate change is one of the defining issues of our time, and meaningful responses are needed from stakeholders across different sectors, including governments, businesses, capital and technology providers, as well as academic and scientific communities. And CLP as a responsible utility actually recognize the crucial role of electricity industry in global efforts to combat climate change. And CLP has been focusing on decarbonizing our power supply and supporting our customers to reduce their carbon footprints. So in 2007, CLP was the first Asian headquartered power company to set voluntary carbon intensity reduction targets when we launched our Climate Vision 2050. And over time, we have been reviewing and tightening our targets. And this climate vision actually has been providing a clear roadmap for us to achieve our targets of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by middle of this century. And earlier this year, we further strengthened our targets to align our business closer to international efforts to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And for the electricity sector, it is important to plan for the long term because if we decarbonize our business, we need to plan carefully to ensure our customers can continue to enjoy a reliable power supply at a reasonable price. And a reliable and affordable and decarbonized electricity supply is the backbone of the economy and the transition to a lower carbon future. And as a company has been operating for more than 120 years, sustainability is the heart of what we do. So becoming sustainable is an ongoing endeavor, and we need to keep working very hard. And today it is wonderful for us to hear more about sustainability and how to fight against climate change from a truly distinguished panel of leaders from different sectors who will be able to share their perspectives on these two important topics and how stakeholders from different parts of the society can work together to make our world more sustainable. Now, it's my pleasure now to invite our esteemed panelists to join our discussion. And may I start by asking our speakers to introduce themselves first. Maybe we have Madam Irina Bokova, to begin with. She's the former Director General of UNESCO and patron of the International Science Council. So, Madam Bokova, please.
Well, you presented me. Thank you very much for participating. Indeed, I was Director General of UNESCO from 2009 to 2017, during the time when the Sustainable Development Agenda was adopted by the United Nations, and also the Paris Climate Agreement. And I believe this experience and the conference resonates very deeply with me.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Bokova. So now may I invite my good friend Winfried, CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, to introduce yourself.
Thank you. First of all, my name, I apologize, because it's mission impossible to pronounce. So my Chinese name is much easier, Yingapa. Or if you look at my name in Japan, it's Ibi-san. I'm born in the year of the horse, so obviously I'm deeply connected already from birth to horses. I'm German, but I made Hong Kong my home at the 1st of April 1998. because I was fascinated about the challenges which come always in a transition, but with an opportunity. So I'm CEO of the Hong Kong Jockey Club since 2007. I'm chairman of the International Horse Federation, Horse Sports Federation. This is the FEI and the International Horse Racing Federation, which is a horse racing site. And I'm chairman of the Asian Racing Federation. And since 2007, I'm CEO of the club, so which is a unique organization. But I will probably tell the story, what we do a little bit later in more holistic. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to it. So last but not least is Professor Qi, Professor of Public Policy and Director of Institute of Public Policy at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Professor Qi, please.
No, I have a similar problem with names, but except mine is too short and hard to pronunciate. Well, just a minor correction. I'm no longer serving as the director of the Institute for Public Policy. I used to be there, and 4 years ago, I decided to take a secondment to Guangzhou and in Nansha, where we are building, the HKUST is building a new campus. And the campus is up running for 2 years. And over there, we do not have any departments or schools. Instead, we have a number of thrust areas, meaning that we are not really focusing on the subjects. We are very much focusing on the problems and the problem solving. And over there, I work with my colleagues, established one thrust area that is called innovation, policy, and entrepreneurship. And the other one, just newly established, is this carbon neutrality and climate change, which is the subject here. So, so you can see that we are very much targeting on these very issues that urgently need solutions, and we're cultivating the next generation of students and the leaders, for solving those problems. So I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Madam Ip for having me here. It's such a great honor to be with our panel and with every one of you here. And I also want to congratulate to our organizing team for putting together such a spectacular event, much needed, and very much looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. So actually, we will have about 10 minutes Q&A time, and after the panel discussion. So if you have any questions, please hold the questions and wait until we finish the discussion now. So may I have the first question for Madam Bokova? So now we understand that when you were Director General of UNESCO, you were actively engaged in the adoption of the United Nations Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So how can science and technology contribute to achieving these goals? And whether you are happy with the progress that we are seeing?
Well, thank you very much for this question. And let me just start by saying that listening to the debate and looking at the title of our conference, I would like to congratulate first and foremost Regina Ip for choosing this title and all the arrangements, the panels. This conversation is very important. I was reminded that the Agenda 2030 was based on the 5 Ps. For diplomats, not P5s, not permanent delegates of the Security Council, but 5 Ps. It is people, prosperity that we have here, also planet, peace, and partnerships. And listening to the debate, I was thinking that this conference precisely is about this. It is about partnerships, because I see a lot of private sector, I see a lot of think tanks, academic institutions, government or representatives like me or Europe-Asia Society with Ambassador Jean Rip. And I would say that this is exactly what is needed nowadays in our debate. So when we speak about the sustainable development, your concrete question, let me just say that the moment of its adoption was a great hope for humanity. It was the year 2015. there was a lot of work preceding the adoption of this agenda, how to set whether there will be 17, 30, or whatever goals. But the effort was truly universal, and it was from all walks of society and of life. It was not just governments. And it was, again, as I mentioned, the Paris Climate Agreement. And I have always thought and considered these two important social contracts, I would say, as one and the same contract for the humanity and for the planet. Now, it is difficult because we know that both of them are challenged sometimes, and nowadays, as the United Nations is preparing for a big summit in September on the future we want, convened by the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, the assessment is very dire of where we go with the Sustainable Development Agenda. We are back. We are definitely back at least 20 years. The reasons are well known. We had the pandemic, we have the war, we have climate change that is advancing, and I would say that it's quite disappointing that as humanity we cannot unite around solving and mobilizing to solve some of these issues. And we heard this morning very interesting discussions about geopolitics and how to tackle these global challenges of humanity. And to just briefly respond to the second part of your question, it was difficult to include into the SDG agenda the relevance of science and technology, because there was a disconnect, and a lot of disconnect still, and we heard it from scientists also this morning, between politicians and scientists, and how to get some of the important messages of scientists to reach those decision makers who finally adopt these documents. And at that moment, I think a very important decision was taken by the then Secretary General of the United Nations to establish a scientific advisory board with him that UNESCO was managing. It was confirmed to us. And the idea was to look at the science policy interface. I think still it's a big challenge today. And I would add to this science policy society interface, because we know that society should be part of this conversation, of this important dialogue, but there is definitely a need to look more deeply into this. And this is my, so to say, second role as a patron of the International Science Council, to promote these ideas in order for political circles, for politicians, to have more of a scientific literacy. And just one word at the end. I think scientists also should play a bigger role in this kind of a science literacy and in this kind of educating, giving a pedagogical approach towards the politicians. I know scientists, of course, are much more immersed into their own important responsibility, but they should not desist from this important, once again, task today.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe I would direct the second question to Winfried. Just now you mentioned sustainability is a key priority of Hong Kong Jockey Club. So and I also understand that you have a club-wide sustainability strategy. So can you share with us more about your plan, your strategy?
Definitely. Thank you for the question. To put it a little bit in context, because when you hear Hong Kong Jockey Club, one thinks only about horses, which is key. That is key of our anchors. We are a world leader when it comes to the sport of horse racing. So we have 0.9% of the world's horse population, but 10% of the best horses are in Hong Kong. So we are a global brand when it comes to horse racing. If you look at our customer base, we have 4 million customers in Hong Kong, which participate in our activities, especially if you look at the wagering side. So we are have a turnover of around 300 million Hong Kong dollars. We have a membership club with 28,000 members in Hong Kong and 2,000 members in mainland China. And last not least, because we are not for profit, every surplus we make goes back to our charity trust. And in the charity trust, we then, in a way, fulfill our purpose for the betterment of the society. So when you see that we fly all horses in, that we have race meetings with 80,000 people, we create a significant carbon footprint. So we, from there, had always in initiatives how we can manage this. So we started first really with focusing on energy. So we invested already around 2000, where we significantly invested in technology to reduce our carbon footprint, our energy consumption. And when one looks at the impact, at that time, you had within 4 or 5 years, you could actually get a payback of even this initiative. So it was even financially very simple. But what we found when you really want to make changes, and it's practically every time you want to transform an organization, when you want to reduce your operational footprint and focusing especially on the operations we control, you can see that you need a massive change management. And you have to make a case for change. So what we did, probably most importantly, besides using technology and measurements, to involve our people, our employees, with a lot of engagement to make a case for change. And that enables us then to move much faster in changing our footprint and how we operate. And that has definitely worked extremely well. If one looks at, we have from 2008 to 2009, besides the scientific side we discuss later a little bit more, we have focused always on energy, water, and waste. Because when we did an assessment where we have probably the most impact and the most risk, that was the key focus area. And we took our whole employees and on this journey. So we have in the waste management, when you look at the processes we have, where we early had adoption of really food recycling, where we in a way have in the water consumption, where we focus on how we can reduce our footprint. When we look at the measurements from 2009, where we started then a really systematic measurement of our whole sustainability efforts. So we have, from 2009, we have tripled our income, our activities. We have, when it comes to land use, we have an increase of 150% between 2009 and now in 2022. But we have reduced our carbon emission by 5%. Is it sufficient? No. And then we have gone further that everything we do from the planning, especially when it comes to building, that we use technology science. We created now a new race course, which we will have in China opening 2026. The whole race course is designed with sustainability in mind. We have a solar roof, which will generate 30% of the energy we consume. And we look at a partnership with China Resources that we build a wind farm closely to this so that we become practically carbon neutral. But our real challenge going forward, we know that we can maximize our footprint and reduce carbon emission probably to the region of 60%, 40%. The rest, when it comes to the third part, we have to think about offsetting and how we do offsetting. This is, in a way, one of our challenges, and we decided to do this much more holistically, that we do a full materiality assessment, where we have the results now, and we will develop then a strategic plan which will take us then in the 5-10-year journey to become an organization and live up to our promise for the betterment of the society.
Thank you. So really appreciate Hong Kong Jockey Club's efforts, and we all understand this is a kind of long-term journey, and it covers a lot of different areas, not only about efficiency, but also other kind of resources, conservation. So may I now direct a question to Professor T. So I understand you are one of the experts in sustainable, urban development as well as environmental policies. So can you share with us your insights into the key urbanization and environmental challenges and opportunities, either globally as well as more locally in the Asia-Pacific region as we work towards a more sustainable future?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Well, cities are important to sustainability and climate change because cities are where the problems are. The cities, TK, you know this too well, consumes roughly 80% of all energy in the world, and at the same time emit roughly 80% of all greenhouse gases. And cities are important also because that's where the solutions are. When you look at China, and 40 years ago, and China's urbanization rate, the proportion of population living in cities were very low, 18%, less than 200 million people. And within the last 4 decades, and we put in 800 million into the cities, just make it roughly 1 billion people now living in cities. While doing so, this is a huge transforming power, and you need to consume a lot of the materials, a lot of energy, emit a lot of greenhouse gases. And in this course of more than 4 decades, and the economic growth has been amazing, right? 40 years ago, we were talking about per capita GDP was about $180 US. Now it's way more than $10,000 US. So that's a very big change. Now, 4 years ago, when the president announced China will try to achieve the carbon neutrality goal, that actually made such a huge turn, because when you count, well, that's the year 2020. When you count from 1980 to the year 2020, that's 40 years. Then within that 40 years, you see the urban population was going up 4 times as much. Then the GDP has been going up exponentially, and the carbon dioxide emission also is exponential increase. Now, with that future target in 2060, the carbon neutrality target, we'll expect the GDP will continue to go up, maybe not as fast as before, but still, we're talking about somewhere between 3.5 to 5% of increase. That also makes it a very huge increase. In the same time, the urban population will stay more or less the same, and the proportion of people living in the cities will continue to go up, but the overall population will decline. Starting last year, we begin to see a quick dropping of the overall population. That makes it the urban population stay pretty much the same through the 2060s, in the next 40 years. 1 billion people living in the cities. At the same time, what is more amazing is this carbon dioxide emission will decrease to net zero in 40 years. So this is where the challenges are. And how can you make a continued increase of GDP and maintaining the stable urban population? At the same time, you're decreasing the greenhouse gases to net zero. I think that's where China faces in a longer term, in the 4 decades, term. In the same time, of course, and we still need to face the continued challenges, to maintain the people out of poverty and to continue to build a green development. And so I think when you look at the 4 decades, the 4 past decades, and 4 decades ago, when the economy and we worry very much about the basic living standard, but now China, within a short period of time, has developed from a brown development toward the green development. And now the last panel was talking about this excess capacity. And this is just an interesting issue, because with this urbanization, with economic growth, we'll also see the whole industry of renewable energy and the green economy has been developing to such extent that many of our collaborators and competitors begin to worry about whether or not this the so-called excess capacity will become a problem. I think now we are putting all these things together in the process of growth, urbanization, cities, and climate change, and trying to find a solution. The last point I want to try to make, even though China has achieved major achievement, but this is such a grand challenge. By one country alone, not just China, any country alone cannot really solve this problem. We have to work together on that.
Very well said. I think we really need to have everybody's efforts in order to address this. So may I come back to Madam Bokova, because just now you mentioned about the disconnect between science and technology and the development goals. And so as a patron of ISC, what role do you see for international scientific collaborations and partnerships in addressing climate change and promoting sustainable development?
I thank you for this question, because I think and I will try to continue a little bit the exchange among scientists. Of course, I'm not a scientist. I'm very humbly listening to their fantastic conversation about the role of science. But the United Nations, and in this particular case, UNESCO, was trying to promote this type of scientific cooperation and integrate it into the Sustainable Development Goals. And I would just come back to 5 years ago, when until that moment there were two big scientific unions, associations that existed in the world, and scientists know them. One was ICSU, the Natural Sciences, and the other was the International Council of Social Sciences. And they decided themselves, the scientists themselves, decided to merge and to create this one big international science council. And why? Because the agenda for sustainable development is requiring all the science. The sustainability is, as we say, multidisciplinary, that sometimes we miss the social science, what is happening in societies, what is the impact of climate change, how to mitigate, how to link it with solving some of these very important issues. And that is why they decided to merge, and now with all the work about promoting sustainability science for development, they are cooperating and contributing to the United Nations. But let me just come back to the idea about sustainability, science and technology. We know that science holds the key to many of the issues that we have today. I did mention that the assessment of the United Nations, and just 2 days ago, United Nations Development Programme published the annual report on human development, and it is indeed alarming. We are going back more than 20 years in the human development, and there are regions which indeed where poverty is increasing with the extremely high numbers. We know that still more than 2.5 billion people do not have access to internet, and we're talking here about technology, about the advancement of this technology. So there is a big impact, I would say, of this decoupling or deglobalization, as we see, on the world, on the global level. And it is not just China, US, or for that matter, Europe, because I think Europe should play also a very important role in this global conversation. I think Europe is the link between sustainability, climate, and human development. I think it's the tradition, so to say, of the European values, as the ambassador just said. But science holds indeed the key to many of these issues. But unfortunately, we don't see a huge funding for science, and I think scientists were speaking about basic sciences, about the applied sciences, about the social science. We need all of this to come together. But what the need is also is, and I would like to pick once again from the previous conversation, is the ethical side of science, and we sometimes forget about this. There was a question about ethics and science because of the big breakthroughs of science, and I just briefly looked once again at what were these important documents that UNESCO adopted for that matter, and I would like just to remind a couple of them. In 1997, the Universal Declaration on Human Genome and Human Rights. I think it is a very important document. 2003, the International Declaration on Human Genetic Data. Once again, the aspect of ethics. The ethics of climate change, 2017. And just recently, the international, once again, recommendation, UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. I believe these are extremely important issues that we should not be neglected in the rush, so to say, of discoveries of how science and technology can contribute to it. And this is where, once again, the International Science Council, of course, working with UNESCO, with some of the other international organizations, very much focusing on it. And this kind of reminded me that it's a famous words of Albert Einstein, who said a long time ago that the most important endeavor in life is the morality of our actions. And I think from a scientist, like at this caliber, of this level, of Albert Einstein, to say, to put an emphasis on this is a very good lesson for all of us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very inspiring that, Madam, you bring up this ethical aspects that we might not pay a lot of attention when we talk about science and technology. So thank you. So maybe next question I would like to ask Winfried. So now we also talk about collaborations, and I understand, and just now you also mentioned about technology to involve your people, right? And I understand Hong Kong Jockey Club is one of the world's top charity donors. And last year, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, through your Institute of Philanthropy, formed a partnership with Rockefeller Foundation to explore possible solutions related to climate change. So could you tell us a bit more about this, the importance of collaboration in dealing with, this kind of issue like climate change?
It is definitely, if one looks at climate change, it needs global solutions. While we, from our charity trust, have focused very much on Hong Kong, because it is a principle, the money we generated and the surplus we generated have go back to the Hong Kong community. So our focus of our trust was very much on Hong Kong. But we have globalized our business. So we have now 25% of our turnover comes from overseas. So this gives us then, to fulfill our purpose of betterment of society and community, this gives us then a real platform to say we believe it is necessary that we not only make contributions in relation to Hong Kong and mainland, so that we globally, in a way, should work as a charity trust. And we founded the Institute of Philanthropy. In general, if one looks at philanthropy, is a key enabler to address social issues. And one social issue and creation of social issues will come via climate change. So with this aspect, we then, in a way, with the Institute of Philanthropy, we could then globally engage. And for us, it goes back to what our best practices are. How we can, in a geopolitical, obviously tense situation, we firmly believe that philanthropy is a platform which enables different views and a different way how we try to solve social issues and how we create social impact. And when one goes specifically in the area of climate change, there is no way that one organization, one country can solve this. And we advocated, therefore, with this Institute of Philanthropy, that we could connect now much more strategically with key organizations, charity foundations, who are in the field of philanthropy. And when it came to the aspect of climate, there was naturally that we could connect to the Rockefeller Foundation, and that we created now, and this goes back to science, it is extremely important that you measure, first of all, what the as is, and what you do to change. And therefore, we had this collaboration now we signed with the Rockefeller Foundation, how we measure impact of climate change with observatories, and we joined the Global Network on Climate. So the COP28 is a major key change for us as an organization that we want to connect much more globally. And as a philanthropic organization, how we can measure social impact. For us, when I look at even how we donate to charity, we made in Hong Kong the trusted decision that one of our key focus areas will be sustainability. We have with sustainability, and we will probably later explore this more, what we do in a way to create changes in Hong Kong, how you in a way create awareness and change management. Because when I always look at what we have achieved, if you only talk academically, if you don't bring people with you, if people feel not this is necessary to make changes, this is where you will not have success. And in the end, that is a focus we have in the Charity Trust, and we will have in the Institute of Philanthropy.
Thank you, Winfried. Professor Qi, just now you gave us a very kind of overview about what's happening in China, and obviously China has a very important role in addressing climate change. And I understand that you led China's first low carbon development plan for the city of Baoding in Hebei province. Mm-hmm. So could you tell us a bit more about you turned academic research into practical solutions in this work?
Well, thank you very much. Before I answer that question, maybe I can touch upon the questions you just asked now, about the role of scientists, and philanthropy. And I totally agree, scientists are so critically important, especially in these very complex issues related to climate change, not just physical science, natural science, and social science, and also about morality, ethical issues as well. So you can see the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have been working on this for more than 30 years, producing this 6th round of assessment report. And also scientists provide this support for setting the target for the Paris 2 degrees Celsius target, and then later on 1.5 Celsius target. In one of the recent polls conducted by The Guardian, and they interviewed and polled a lot of scientists, and 76% of all these scientists believe we will go overshoot, right? Way beyond 2 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. So sometimes the scientists, myself trained as a scientist here, Dr. Feng, many of us trained as a scientist. Sometimes scientists are also feel, helpless when it comes to targeting on these issues of complex issues like climate change. So I think that's where other forces comes in, right? Like philanthropy, like this social civil society, like the government. We need to work together, on these issues. 20 years ago when Dr. Victor Feng was directing us on the Nature Conservancy, serving as the Asia Pacific Council on the Nature Conservancy. They not only provide the financial support, but I think more importantly, they provide these advices and guidance, on these issues. Over the years, you can see not only more projects, but also more people get trained, more organizations, more people get mobilized, working towards this noble cause. So I think that's where we see the role of philanthropy. That project you just mentioned on Baoding, that was the very first project on planning, low carbon planning, low carbon city planning in China. It was started by a modest grant from WWF. Then started with Baoding and Shanghai, and Baoding did not know why Baoding is sitting together with Shanghai, but anyway, they were quite excited. So we were brought in as a scientist to work with them and to develop then later the very first project on the low carbon planning. And because of that, this was 2008, because of that, next year, 2009, when the National Development and Reform Commission began to design the low carbon pilot program, and Baoding became one of the 5 cities identified for that project. Then next year, 2010, when NDRC began to have this 5 provinces and 8 cities, and once again, and Baoding became one of the 13 pilots. So you can see it started with a small seed, and then it grow, and then you have a bigger and bigger influence. So I see that kind of forces in the overall governance system is what we really need, to tackle this hard and complex and urgent problems that we are facing. And internationally, right now, we're not in the best time, but this is also the time that we should not lose our optimism. We should work harder to tackle those problems. Right?
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's always if we have a good start, then we are have success. So I think that's a good example. So now I still have another question, but then it's also my role to make sure that I reserve some time for the floor to ask questions. So may I then now turn to the floor to see whether there are any questions? Yes, please. Please identify yourself and then ask your question.
Yes, I'm Hashim. I was one of the panelists earlier. Just want to ask the panel. We talk about climate change and sustainable development, but I personally, I'm very worried about artificial intelligence. We're talking, I think, Madam Bokova, you were mentioning about artificial intelligence. There was an international declaration a few years ago. When I think of artificial intelligence, I think of the movie Terminator. And some of, I'm old enough to have watched the first movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you know what happened, right? The robots then made other robots. And I'm really worried about this. I'm thinking of maybe some rogue, rogue X, country X, with a dictator deciding to do something about it and then creating. So this is something when we talked about, Professor Yang, we talked about common values and common challenges. I think climate change is one, but I think artificial intelligence, the way it's going, is so fast. It may be much more of a danger to us, Professor, than climate change. I don't know. Both are dangerous. So maybe you have any ideas how governments can, the UN, maybe UNESCO can come up with some, maybe coercion, force of the law to prevent rogue, mad professors, mad scientists to create Terminators. Okay.
Thank you. May I ask?
It's a fundamental question. And I wanted to ask this question at the panel that was led by my friend Nancy Ip, Professor Ip, but then kind of we didn't have time. But I just want to say what I think about it and a little bit of what the United Nations is doing. I did mention the Declaration on the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence adopted by UNESCO 3 years ago, and it was trying to set the conversation. It does not, I would say, exhaust all the aspects because it's complex, but to kind of attract the attention and to focus that there is an ethical side in all this. And I think this is something very important. Now, the current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has convened, as I understand, a small panel around him, and he launched the idea that probably the United Nations will be the platform where some of these issues can be solved, but there is some kind of a cautious approach on behalf of some countries, powerful countries, which have I would say, the most developed, I'm speaking about the United States. So for the time being, the approach is quite cautious. I don't know what the decision of the Secretary General will be. It's a very recent kind of a development. I would mention that the European Union is most advanced in this area about some kind of a regulation, because I do believe that and it's my personal opinion, that we should not stop the development of it, definitely. But as to the deployment, I would kind of compare it with the pharmaceutical industry, right? You develop drugs, but you don't deploy them, right, Professor Kornberg? You test them, you see what they do, how they do. So I would rather look at this comparison when we speak about artificial intelligence, and the European Union, the regulation that was adopted, debated in the European Parliament for a very long time. It sets 3 kind of stages of regulation, no time to develop all this. Everybody was involved, and I think it's a good example of the beginning, I would say, of some kind of a framework of what artificial intelligence can do and should not do also to society.
I don't know, any comments or?
I'm always optimistic in a way that opportunities like artificial intelligence have risk, and there is no doubt about it, but I believe still that it comes to finding global solutions, that there is already a significant discussion how one looks at this risk, and then how you can mitigate it. In the end, it has the global impact which is necessary that one comes to an agreement how you would manage this risk. And the European Union obviously has made already significant progress. I believe if one looks in China, where when you look at artificial intelligence, when I go to China, I have to say China is in a lot of things much more advanced than people realize. While a lot of times talking about artificial intelligence, it is much more applied in a holistic way. And there is too definitely the view that one has to monitor and has to manage this risk. So principally I'm optimistic, but it is definitely a topic which could go rapidly forward. But I see the benefits, even if you look at climate change. You can use artificial intelligence to find much better solutions. So one should embrace it, but a general regulatory framework would be definitely helpful. And I'm pretty optimistic that the more we advance, that this regulatory framework will be developed.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful question. And we are here talking about climate change, but in fact, there are many very important risks that we need to worry about. You identified a few of them. This, you know, in University of Cambridge, they have a center for the study of existential risks. And Professor Martin Rees was the co-founder and led that center. So in that center, they identified 4 types of existential risks. Climate change being one, and there is the risk coming from AI, and the risk from this grand pandemic, like the COVID that we have already experienced. And of course, this risk from the nuclear war, and we're now seeing that kind of risk, unfortunately, is growing. And Stanford University is also, since 2019, created a similar center for the existential risks. This morning, we're talking about that within our HKUST system, talking about how the importance of this. So these are the risks that really threatening the very existence survival of our human beings, our human civilization. And your question also reminded me almost exactly 9 years ago when President Xi was going to Russia, and he published an article on May 8th, and this was celebrating the 70th anniversary of the victory over the anti-fascism, the World War II. And in that, he also listed all these major risks that the entire world is facing, and highlighting the point that we often see that we are competitors, even enemies of each other. But in fact, what we do not see, or we see less clearly, is this common threat we're all facing. That is our real enemies. But we're spending so much resources on the enemies, not really on that. Let me just give you a little bit data on this. 2009, when the world leaders come together in Copenhagen, they agreed that the developed countries will come up with $100 billion to tackle this climate change problem. So what is it now? We're still have a long way to go to come up with that 100 billion. But compare that to the Ukraine war, right? And between just like some major countries, major powers, I won't name them, right? Already way more than $100 billion quickly raised to tackle that problem. So I think this is a very big issue of priority setting, and the real big challenge that we identify the real risks we're all facing. I think that this is such a big challenge, and we tend to put less energy and thought into these real problems.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we have used up all our time. And if I may, just a very quick kind of wrap up. I think based on the discussion, sustainability, climate change is an issue that cannot be addressed individually. We have to work together. Collaboration is important. We are seeing collaboration between the scientific and academic segment with the various organizations to address the issue, but maybe we need to work harder. And there are risks about science, and we need to have maybe kind of regulation or other kinds of control, so that everybody would be more kind of comfortable how technology and science can help. But anyway, I think personally I'm optimistic, and I would really appeal to your support to work together to help address climate change, because the Earth is our home, and we all hope that our next generation can have a better home to live. Thank you very much.